Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. One of the ongoing themes here at the Jeffrey Epstein Show has been the financial aspect of this case. We know that the people involved with Jeffrey Epstein, the enablers, the one tie that binds them to Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal enterprise are their financial transactions. And that is one of the things that drew me into this case originally. I knew that this was a RICO case right from the jump. Just from reading the basic outline of what occurred here, it was obvious that there was something more going on than just the sex trafficking portion of this case. Now, that was the bread and butter for them, right? That was most certainly why all of this was put into effect, so that they can compile these dossiers. But also, let's remember, it's about money for these people as well. So, to facilitate the criminal activity, you have to have money, right? And what better way to get that money than through money laundering operations? And that was the premise I was always working on and going off of since the beginning here. I've always thought that this was a huge money washing operation and that there was an extreme amount of dollars being laundered through these shell companies. And today, we're going to talk about another person who helped facilitate all of that. Another person who we have talked about at length here on the podcast. And that person is Jes Staley. Jes Staley is in charge over at Barclays, but before that, he was over at JP Morgan. And he was in charge of Jeffrey Epstein's accounts. He was in charge of moving Jeffrey Epstein's money. He was also in charge of helping Jeffrey Epstein grow that money. Oh, you think it was one-way traffic? Of course it wasn't. For Jeffrey Epstein, well, what he would do is steer business to Jes Staley. And now that's just bad enough on its own, right? If it was just a professional relationship, that would be bad enough on its own. But folks, it's much deeper than that. As you will remember, Jes Staley and Jeffrey Epstein were very close. So close, in fact, that Jes Staley visited the island after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest. They stayed friends, they stayed in contact, and they were just... everything was the same old, same old. No matter the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, no matter that Jeffrey Epstein was under investigation for abuse against children, none of that mattered to somebody like Jes Staley. All that he saw were dollar signs and more ways to find his way closer to the top. And I know that sounds crazy, right? A guy like Jes Staley, how much more money or power do you need? You know, again, it all goes back to what we talk about here all the time, greed. And most of these people have found themselves in the position that they're in because of their greed. And that's just the way the way the cookie crumbles for these people, right? Guys like Jes Staley, he didn't need to have Jeffrey Epstein as an associate. He didn't need to have him in his bank. Plenty of money coming through those doors. But the greed got the best of him. And not only the greed, but the lust for power and the lust to move up that social ladder in so-called polite society. That is what is most important to these people. And that is what their goal is, no matter what. They don't care about the survivors. They don't care about people that they're giving predatory loans to. They don't care about any of that. It is all about the consolidation of power and moving up the ranks within so-called polite society. And that is the game that Jes Staley has been playing for years. Well, now, Jes Staley is under assault. Jes Staley is on the defense. All those years of high-flying, living it up, moving money for Jeffrey Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's associates, and there was nobody questioning your behavior. Well, now, not only are you being investigated by the authorities, but somebody in your own boardroom is looking to shake things up and oust you. We've been talking about Edward Bramson and his desire to remove Jes Staley since this story broke here, and it is still underway. The battle continues, the battle rages on, and Bramson is now going even harder considering the subpoena. So, look, the battle over Barclays is just heating up, folks, and we're going to stay on top of it. We're going to continue to cover it, and we will continue to see how it breaks with Jes Staley because, look, he's a very powerful man, and his role within the Epstein play cannot be forgotten. This is somebody who helped facilitate a great amount of money of Jeffrey Epstein's, and my question is, was all of it clean? Point blank, period. That is my question, the only question I even care about. Where did all of that money originate, and where was the destination? What happened in between? Was it all claimed? Is it all, logged? Let's see it. Let's see all of the transactions. Our article today is from Bloomberg. The headline, Barclays activist adds Epstein subpoena to campaign to oust CEO. This article was authored by Stefania Spazzotti. Barclays PLC's top shareholder stepped up his campaign to oust Chief Executive Officer Jes Staley, pointing to a subpoena that requires J.P. Morgan Chase & Company to hand over Staley's communications with deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And now we know that that subpoena to J.P. Morgan is doing some digging, right? They want the paperwork, they want all of the information from the time that Epstein started at J.P. Morgan to the time that he was ousted at J.P. Morgan. And Jes Staley's fingerprints are all over it. Jes Staley was the one who facilitated all of that. Jes Staley was the one in charge of Epstein's accounts. So yeah, it's a pretty good strategy from Bramson to go this route. If I was Bramson, I would be going very hard here. Now remember, Edward Bramson is a huge shareholder inside of Barclays. In fact, the biggest single shareholder with his Sherborne company. So Bramson has a pretty big voice when it comes to situations like this. And him amplifying his voice and using it to try to oust Staley by referring to these subpoenas and Staley's entanglements with Jeffrey Epstein is a winning strategy. It is a strategy that eventually is going to make Barclays move. Jes Staley will not be the CEO of Barclays for much longer. Activist Edward Bramson said in a letter sent to his investors this week and seen by Bloomberg News that the request could further damage Barclays' reputation. Authorities in the U.S. Virgin Islands demanded the information in May from J.P. Morgan, Staley's former employer, as part of their investigation into Epstein. And we all know as well that Deutsche Bank now is caught up as well. There are several financial institutions that are on the hook now. And all of these places that were facilitating trades for Epstein, money movement for Epstein, all of these people better be on notice. The days of your transactions not receiving scrutiny are over. There is a bright light being shined down upon all of you now. 2 of their 15 requests specifically asked for Staley's emails with Epstein when he was an executive as the U.S. lender. U.S. VI officials have sent subpoenas to various banks as well as to billionaire investor Leon Black looking for more information about their business ties to the late financier, pedophile. And we talked about that recently, right? Leon Black and Apollo Global. And it's the same thing here with Jes Staley. All of these rich people have been now caught up in the financial aspect of these crimes. And I'm telling you, folks, we're seeing something bloom here like we have never seen before. If the prosecutors are able to do their due diligence here and tie all of these people together, connect all of these financial transactions together, then what we have on our hands is one gigantic, huge RICO case. Perhaps maybe one of the biggest ones we have ever seen. The question remains, do the prosecutors have the fruits to go through with it. Bramson, whose Sherborne Investors Management LP recently increased its stake in Barclays to almost 6%, has long been skeptical of Staley's strategy of boosting the bank's securities unit. The investor intensified his criticism of Staley earlier this year as regulators in the UK began scrutinizing Staley's account of his ties to Epstein. Now, Bramson, for his part, has a lot of money tied up into this company, right? He doesn't like Staley as it is, and he doesn't really care for the bank securities unit either, right? So what he's doing is he's parlaying the Jeffrey Epstein ties into the overarching picture of Bramson being removed. And the Epstein ties are the kicker for him, right? That's going to be what overturns the apple cart for Staley. You can't get away from that. Look, if Les Wexner had to step down, if Glenn Dubin had to step down, if all these Harvard cats had to step down, etc., it is not long, Jes Staley, before it is your turn to step down. Enough is enough. Quit with the charade. All right? Everybody knows that you and Epstein were boys. Everybody knows that you and Epstein were involved in all sorts of financial transactions together. What we don't know is how many of those were legit and how many of those were criminal. The kindest thing the board could do for him would be to let him go, Bramson wrote in the letter. The board could then focus strictly on damage control and on the future course of the company. I agree with Bramson here, right? I think that it is a good idea to get rid of Jes Staley, start from scratch, do some damage control, and then moving forward, do a damn better job at vetting the people you're going to put in such positions. I mean, everybody knew who Jeffrey Epstein was. Everybody knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. But yet, Barclays, one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, had no idea that Staley was so tied to him, that Staley and him were so close. Stop it. They knew. But once again, folks, are you ready? They did not care. Spokesman for Barclays, Bramson, and J.P. Morgan declined to comment. An official at the Department of Justice in the Virgin Islands didn't respond to an emailed request for comment. A copy of the subpoena seen by Bloomberg News requires J.P. Morgan to handle all communications between James E. Staley and Jeffrey E. Epstein regarding his accounts, services, or transactions, as well as those involving 2 Caribbean islands owned by Epstein. So this is very, very large, right, in scope. This is a large demand here. All of these communications must be turned over. Now, that seems great on its face, right? But what about the communications that were done privately? What, these people don't have private servers? Of course they do. There's a way that they were communicating privately. I have no doubt of that, especially considering we're going on the premise that this was an intelligence operation. So, of course, they would have the resources to do some shadow communication. So the emails that are going to get turned over or have been turned over are just the ones that are saved on the server or wherever they may be saved. So again, that won't give us a full picture, but it definitely is a good start. While Staley's strategy has been somewhat vindicated after trading revenues surged during the pandemic, he continues to be dogged by his historic ties to Epstein. The banker has previously said he had known Epstein since 2000 when he was head of J.P. Morgan's private bank and told to strike up a professional relationship with the financial advisor, pedophile. Well, it was more than just a professional relationship. And that's what they all try and bank on, right? Oh, it was a professional relationship. Jeffrey Epstein and I weren't breaking bread together. I was not his friend. My wife and I weren't at his island. In reality, all of that occurred. You were his friend, you were breaking bread, and you were at his island. So that's the thing with these people, right? They all lie from the very beginning about their relationship with Epstein, so we start off on the wrong foot from the jump. So how are we supposed to believe anything else you have to say if you won't even cop up and admit that you had a relationship with the guy? He said their relationship began to taper off once he left the American bank in 2013 and ended in 2015 after shortly visiting Epstein's private island in the Virgin Islands while on a sailing holiday with his wife. So, 2015, years after Epstein's already been convicted of his crimes, years after the sordid details started to spill out, Jes Staley shows up on his dumbass sailboat on a holiday at Jeffrey Epstein's island? Really? So you just show up for what? You're just going to roll by on the boat, you guys floating by, and you're going to stand on the deck and wave? Of course not. You stopped, you went onto the island, you partaked in his hospitality, and you guys broke bread and did whatever it is you sick, disgusting bastards do. I mean, what is it? Wait for a full moon and then go out and holler at the full moon, howl at the full moon covered in blood? I mean, at this point, I don't put anything past these people, folks. And the fact that Staley is trying to play down his relationship with Epstein is laughable at best. I, for one, am glad that Bramson is continuing to keep his feet over the fire and to keep the pressure on, because Jes Staley, my friends, has no business being in charge at Barclays. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, all of the links that go with the episode can be found in the description box. As for me, well, I'll be back later. Hope you all have a great Friday afternoon.